Whenever I find the person that says he isn't prejudiced, I watch that person.
I think it's very hypocritical that they say that they're sorry, but they continue to do these things.
They really don't want the money, they want the land.
This is Martha's Vineyard, and these are the cliffs at Gay Head. The Indians consider these cliffs theirs. The Indians are smarter now. They're not willing to sell their land, so people aren't offering them ridiculous prices. They're simply saying, you're not really Indians anymore.
How would you feel if you had lived here all your life? If your parents before you had farmed this land? If the legends of tour operators told their paying customers were your legends, but you were told, this isn't yours. In fact, we don't even know who you are. You probably would feel much like the Native Americans of this spot, Gay Head, Massachusetts, on Martha's Vineyard. I'm Bill Turpie, and on New England Magazine, I'd like you to join me for a look at some people on whom we have placed a burden of proof that few of us have to live with.
I wish my life away, but I hope that I don't see Gay Head cluttered with hotels, condominiums, and things like that.
Donald Melanson is chief of the Wampanoags at Gay Head, a tribe of Indians the government doesn't know what to do with because the United States isn't sure they're really Indians.
They don't know what they are. Therefore, they're trying to pass what they don't know on to me. I know what I am.
Because he knows who he is, Don Melanson, running deer, comes to this wild cranberry bog to harvest the berries, each year on the second Tuesday of October. He's a deputy sheriff for the county and drives the local school bus. This day is a holiday for Indian children on the vineyard. He's brought those who wanted to with him to the common lands for the Harvest Festival.
Look, what you do is this.
Gladys Wittes is a historian for the Wampanoags at Gay Head.
What they didn't use in my day, there were quite a few of the people here that had fishing boats, and the cranberries that we didn't need for our own use were taken on those boats and taken to New Bedford and traded for food like sugar, flour, by the barrel.
When I was very small, they all started, well, I could hear them before daylight, coming down from the west end, coming down through the homestead with the ox carts, getting ready to come down to the bogs. And it was really a great event at that time.
But on this day, Cranberry Day, the traditional harvest of the wild cranberry bogs at Gay Head for the Indians, the numbers are down. Kevin Devine remembers.
Do you wish there were more people down here? There are not too many people here.
Well, last year there was.
There were a lot down here?
They had sodas and all that.
Still, though, this day is critical.
Cranberry Day, it's a little hard to explain, I think, because it's a feeling that is inside, and knowing our history and the fact that we almost lost it, Cranberry Day is the one, I think, positive link that we have with the past.
That link with the past is vital because these people are in a struggle for these lands, lands which they have always considered theirs, which they never needed fences for, and their ancestors never wanted to really have to learn to speak the language of lawyers to maintain. They only amount to about 250 acres of Gay Head, but there is new construction here, new encroachment on their territory. A helicopter hovered over a celebrity's land as we talked. Jackie Onassis has a residence in Gay Head now.
At one time, when I was very young, there were very few white people living on Gay Head. Nobody wanted to be among the Indians, and the Indians were looked at, with a little bit of lesser degree than the white people were the almighty, and the Indians were less than they, and they didn't want to live up here. Now they can't wait to do whatever they have to see that we can't live here anymore.
Thelma Silva is a poet. She says she likes it when all the summer people leave the vineyard.
This is the only home that we have. We don't have another to go to when winter comes. We have to find an existence and subsistence here on this land that was our forefathers and is our right.
The Indians have reached an agreement in principle with the town of Gayhead on the common lands. Ever since Gayhead became a town in 1870, the selectmen have all been Indian, except for one for a brief time, and he was married to an Indian. The agreement is that these lands should be held in common by the Indian. The lands are made up of wild cranberry bogs, sand dunes, and these cliffs, once rich with clay, as were parts of the beaches. But the Indians have lost their naivete. They want the agreement to be legally binding. They have gone to court in the 9th Federal District. They also want recognition as an Indian tribe. The federal recognition process is a complicated one. There are hardly any tribes east of the Mississippi which have it.
I went down to Washington to research our tribal group, and when I got there, there was nothing. They said, "You're a Wampanoag?" Well, there aren't any Wampanoags to our knowledge.
The Wampanoags at Mashpee on Cape Cod lost a land battle because the judge ruled in effect they weren't an Indian tribe any longer.
How many parts Indian or Native American are you?
That is one thing that, personally, I think of myself as all American. But when you go and break it up, no one knows.
But in here, you're saying this part is Native American.
That's right.
This part
That's
feels
right.
something.
That's right.
The Wampanoags at Gayhead have an enigmatic history. They were receptive to the early English settlers, welcoming trade with them, selling them land. The tribe was quick in its acceptance of Christianity, responding to the missionary work of Thomas Mayhew, who even today is spoken of with reverence.
Wampanoags have been friendly. Their first contact with the non-Indian was friendly. We had no part of King Philip's War. We have lived comfortably with the non-Indians that have moved into the island. And personally, and I think a lot of our people think that had more of the people been of the temperament that Mayhew was and understood the natives as well as he did, that the history of the United States would have been much different.
These Indians were part of the Praying Indians and took only a peaceful role in the bloody King Philip's War between Indian and settler in the 1600s. From that history, they might seem acquiescing, but when the Commonwealth of Massachusetts attempted to make them wards of the state in the last century, stripping their legal rights away and appointing a guardian over them, they refused. The Gayhead Wampanoags have been friendly, and they remain tenacious.
Is this really the Indians' land, or does it belong to the whole town? As far as the Indians are concerned, this is our land. It was our right to be here, and because it was common land and made a part of the town, doesn't give them any rights on it, really.
We did such a good job of getting rid of the Indian through cultural harassment, disease, and encroachments on their territory that by 1843 only 6 full-blooded Indians remained in the Commonwealth. The Indian population was around 650. When New England Magazine returns, we'll take a look at who the real Indians are today and at their continuing struggle. Donald Wittes is a Wampanoag. He heads up the Tribal Council office at Gayhead. He is the son of Gladys Wittes. He worked off island for a while, but felt attracted to the struggle of his people.
Basically, I was, in the beginning, headed towards graphic design. I ended up as a partner in screen printing enterprise, which I left to come to here.
But now you're a political activist.
You could call me that.
Skip around? Good.
But he says his activism is not that of trying to argue for causes no one is listening to. It is instead the carrying out of a role for his tribe, an effort to gain justice for them, namely the securing of the common lands and federal recognition.
Can Indian people today get justice from the courts?
That's a loaded question. Justice is measured in terms of your satisfaction with whatever the decision is. not necessarily indicative of what is morally, which is correct pertaining to the essentials of your argument. It's a matter of whether or not you're satisfied with what the court is able to do.
One of the things he doesn't believe his tribe can do is get all of Gay Head back, though some think they should. Gay Head is geographically segregated from the rest of the vineyard. There are 2 bodies of water between it and the main section of the island. The white settlers, soon after establishing themselves in the vineyard, began to encroach on Indian lands all over the island. The edging in worried Mitak, sachem or leader of the tribe, in 1670, and he drew up a document called Mitak's Deed. That document begins by making things clear. The deed says, "Know ye, all people, that I, Mitak, and my principal men, my children, and people are owners of this, our land forever. They are ours, and our offspring forever shall enjoy them."
If there is an Indian philosophy, it is that you and the land should coexist. There should not be an artificial interruption in terms of how the land is used, you know, and how you view it. The problem comes in terms of the ownership or control.
The Indians at Gay Head remained free of legal entanglements because they held their land in common, voting annually where to plant, where to fence in animals. That carried even into recent time. Chief Donald Melanson.
I can remember that if somebody wanted to plant a field, plant a crop or something, and they didn't have the land, they'd go next door and tell whoever lived there, that they do what they like to do. And 9 times out of 10, they'd let them go ahead and do it.
The state made Gay Head a town in 1870. Before that, the Indians had refused to be made wards of the state and have a guardian appointed over them. Their geographical isolation and their economic independence helped in that stand. But when the state made Gay Head a town, Indian land became state land. When the town of Gay Head recently agreed to transfer the acres of common lands to the tribal council, the non-Indian Gay Head Taxpayers Association sued the town over that transfer. The Indians claim their ancestors really were coerced into voting to become a town in 1870. The issue relates to decades of legal entanglements over Indian lands and to a basic difference in viewpoint.
All it is a matter of whose laws take precedent, whether or not the original purpose of the Native American in the United States, to use the land, to utilize it, and while not interfering with it, as opposed to a materialistic concept which includes private ownership of land, the exclusion of certain people from certain areas of the land, and just using the resources without giving anything back.
As Gloria Levitas, an anthropologist, puts it, the current court proceedings are nothing more than the process of assimilation or destruction that began over 400 years ago, and as in the past, the burden of proof is being placed on only one party.
Burden of proof is on us in this case.
Thomas Mayhew bought Martha's Vineyard for just slightly more than the Dutch paid for Manhattan, but he also got Nantucket and the Elizabethan Islands in the same deal. When he settled on the vineyard, he insisted on buying land, however, from the Indians and not cheating them or coercing them out of their property.
As far as them selling land, I don't think they realized what the meaning of selling land meant, because if you read back through your history books, a lot of times that they sold land, and then they went back and tried to use it again.
The younger Mayhew was lost at sea on a trip to England. He was deeply mourned by the Indians. His father, at 65, took over Mayhew's work with them, preaching and caring for the Indians into his 90s. He sold Martha's Vineyard to Governor Donegan of New York, and Donegan, as a landlord, was not as benevolent as the Mayhews had been. But the people of Gay Head are tolerant, even forgiving.
Selling the land was a part of his culture, I mean. This is the one big thing they didn't understand particularly, but he had his reasons, I guess, for selling. And of course, their idea was they needed more land for more people.
There is a reason for this tolerance.
He sold the island, but you have to understand there that he was being a non-Indian. You know what I mean? It could have been Mayhew, it could have been someone else. But his dealings, I think, over and above that, to me, more important, the fact that he understood and allowed Native Americans their own pace in things and didn't push like.
He did not want to destroy their culture.
That's right.
The Indians are still struggling to regain that culture, but their language is lost, not spoken any longer, but there is strength, even on a day of sparse turnout at the bogs. The tour operators on Martha's Vineyard have always played up the presence of the Indians at Gay Head, taking people to witness the view from these cliffs and marvel at the varied colors in the face of the cliffs, a sight which inspired the Portuguese explorer Verrazano. But now the tribe wants federal recognition, a recognition that says, yes, you really are a tribe, Indian, Native American. The process is demanding, requiring a tracing of the social and legal history of the tribe, the preparing of a detailed genealogy for each tribal member, tedious work with anthropologists. And how does it make Don Wittis feel to have to legally
Prove you're an Indian, prove these lands are yours, prove your tribe has existed in perpetuity almost. I'm not asked to do that.
Mm-hmm. It is ludicrous in a sense.
When somebody says to you, what part Indian are you, how does that make you feel?
I get upset because I don't know of any other person that is asked that same question. And I don't see why I should be singled out to be different. But it happens all the time. And I don't know whether it's because people don't stop to think or whether they have been brainwashed that Native Americans are a separate and distinct people.
J.J. Mendez is aware of the issue also.
Do you think of yourself as a Native American, as Indian? How do you think of yourself?
Like a real Indian.
When New England Magazine returns, a look at the Wampanoags' ability to embrace a new faith without losing their culture.
Many people have seen the conversion of the Indians as a means to destroying Native American culture. But here on Martha's Vineyard, this is the oldest Indian church in the country. And Christianity was presented to the Indians here in a way that did not demand a turning from their own tradition.
I think our people here, of the Indian members, feel that we like to keep as many of our own in there as long as we can. Although we have a non-Indian deacon now in our church. We met Leonard Vanderhoop, our deacon. And so far, it's the way we feel that we would like to have our church remain an Indian church if possible.
Pat Melanson has been clerk of the Indian Church at Gay Head for 20 years. It is Baptist now in affiliation and traces its lineage back to the 1600s. She is aware of the heritage of her race and of her own faith.
We were very peaceful people here. We were not violent or fighters, as the case may have been like in Rhode Island. They were warriors. We were always a peaceful tribe. And I think they were perhaps ready for Christianity at that time.
The tribe responded to Mayhew's preaching and to subsequent Native American preachers and pastors who followed, but today the allegiance of the tribe is sparse.
The community right now has sort of drifted away from the church and Christianity. I don't know the reason for it. We have tried to figure it out, but so far we haven't been able to really draw any of the young people into the church. Maybe someday they'll come back to it. We hope they will.
Pat is married to Donald Melanson, Running Deer. Her Indian name is Little Dove. Pat traces her personal commitment to Christianity to a vision she had just before she lost a child. The Indians take seriously matters of signs, visions, dreams. It may relate more to their culture than to the rational faith of a Christian belief system.
I think you'll find that quite a bit amongst Indian tribes, that sometimes they have visions that may seem unlikely to other people. I mean, we take it as a sign.
What about spirits? For you, they are reality?
We have things that happen once in a while that you don't have a explanation for.
If I have a dream, I may connect that dream with something that may happen later on in my life.
When I was first married, my wife came from down about a half mile down below the hill from me, and I didn't know how she would take to living in my house, because it was known as having what you might call spirits in it, but it didn't bother her.
She could accept that.
Yeah. She seen and heard a few things that kind of shook her up, I think. But
can you give me any specifics?
well, she heard someone in the second story walking around. There was no one up there.
How do you look on that?
Well, that particular instance I take as someone wanting to find out whether she would be accepted in that house or not. That's the way I looked at it.
And she was.
Evidently.
The Wampanoags at Gayhead had this ability to both assimilate new beliefs, but also to remain Indian. Many of the tribe was involved in the whaling trade that the islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket were famous for.
They were natural fishermen, and then when the whaling period came along, the captains to whaleboats soon learned that Gayhead Wampanoags were good harpooners.
Just how good were the Wampanoags of Gayhead? Gladys Wittes, Uncle Amos, became an object of great interest to the producers of the movie Moby Dick because of his experience on one voyage.
They sighted a white whale. At the time, they didn't know it. It was just a whale to them. But of course, there had been stories about white whales and how dangerous they were and what killers they were. So they sort of kept their eye out for them. But when he struck this one, they had no idea that it was a white whale. But he did, and with the accuracy that they had, when he struck it, he killed it. And when it came up, they saw that it was white.
The Gayhead Indians seem contradictory at this point because their legends involve them deeply with the whale. Moshep was their legendary leader, their deity.
Moshep, when in his dreams, had dreams of the white people coming, and he finally decided that he was afraid it would be the same thing that he'd left on the mainland. There'd be strife, so he gave his people a choice of either going with him or being thrown into the sea. And the ones that wanted to be thrown into the sea, he turned into whales so that they could roam wherever they wanted to go.
The whale and the ancestors are still present today.
Foggy nights, sometimes we say we can hear her singing with the sounds that come from the ocean. They're still checking on us.
Though there is that growing strength of ties being forged with the past, there is also a sense of what has transpired in their experience with the settlers of the past centuries. How would Moshep view things now?
I think they would be very disappointed. Yeah, I think he probably would think that he should have taken us all.
To be Indian, to be Native American, is to be arguing for your existence. It is to be careful of disappearing behind the legends and the guilt that this country feels but has few means of acknowledging. It is to be arguing for one's identity, an identity that you have felt in the exclusions and that you perceive in the recesses of your being with a knowledge that no law court can verify that you were here first. It is to have a claim that is so disturbing that this culture says the burden of proof lies entirely on you. I'm Bill Turpie for New England Magazine.